welcome to What Now with Anna and Eric. I am Anna.
I'm still Eric, right here. She's right there. I don't know which way, but
I really don't know which direction. Yes. This is actually our second attempt at this podcast because I didn't record the first one.
Sometimes you hit record, sometimes you just don't.
It's true, but I confess up to my mistake, so I'm going to confess.
Everybody forgives you. Forgiveness works out.
Thank you. Eric, what's your 3-word summary of this week?
3-word summary is, what up, God? What up, God? Just David, just me again. What up, God?
Is that how you start your prayers?
That is how I started out. I'm hip. I'm cool. I'm with it. What up, God?
Yeah, that's cool. Mine is, what a bummer. Just because I felt like David was pretty consistently there emotionally through most of the Psalms that we hit on, So he was just struggling.
So what you're saying, if you're going through struggle, if you're in a situation where you just think, man, life isn't the way I want it right now, things are different, I don't know how to cope with it, you can go to God over and over again and God will be there? Wow. Huh.
It's amazing.
What do you know?
So catch-up tip. Eric and I did talk about this the first time we tried to do this podcast. The 30-day shred. Reading the Bible in 30 days.
Good luck.
Good luck. Which we have learned would be about 2 hours of reading per day at 1.5 speed with the shortest translation.
Yeah. So basically, for all of you procrastinators out there, just listen to this podcast and then December 1st, hit the 30-day shred and finish the same time everybody else does.
True. Or you could even start the 30-day shred now, catch up to where we are at that point, and then boom, you're caught up in like 5 days. Maybe.
Oh, yeah, true. I didn't even think about that. That's an actual catch-up tip. Mine was just put it off till later tip.
Put it off till later. So for those of you really far behind, there are lots of options. You could 30-day shred this.
Just get it done. Done.
So we are reading the Bible through chronologically. Would the 30-day shred line up with that? I'm wondering if it will.
I don't think it will.
I think for the most part, we're pretty close.
I don't.
Considering how far we are, except for the Psalms. So we're reading through the Bible chronologically. In a year, we encourage you to get on board. It is crazy cool what you can see when you are just reading straight through, because you are understanding things that you're never going to get if you're just bouncing back and forth in Scripture. Because things are going to hit you chronologically where you're like, whoa, I didn't even realize that those things were connected. I didn't realize that they were talking about something that hadn't even happened yet. And it's just so cool to see that and to really get the greater picture of God.
Yeah.
So
what we realized in our first recording of this is that we read this part of Scripture in completely different ways and from a completely different mindset. So it works out. There are different strokes for different folks, as they say.
That's true. Yeah. And it is cool reading with somebody else too, because you do get that different perspective. I learned a lot from Eric. Did I expect that? I did. No, I did expect that.
Bar was way. Did I expect that I would learn something? Not a chance.
I have high expectations. Eric is very insightful.
Yeah. I was here just for sheer entertainment value. Just bring the jokes. Bring the jokes and the humor and leave the smarty stuff for you.
Every 5 minutes, just like throw out a joke about something. To keep the spirit up.
There you go.
So we're looking at roughly Psalms 12 through Psalms 101, but there were like chapters that we had already read or that were not by David, and so they got pushed back to a different week, because remember, this is chronologically. David is about to die. We got to get all of his stuff out before he goes.
We got to get all of his writings in there before we can kill him off. We have still hanging on to that.
Speaking of which, so one of the Psalms, I did think, is this like him on his deathbed? Because he talks about, I'm laying in my bed, I can't even get out, and people are mocking me. So I was just like, that's got to be what it is, right?
But once again, that's the perspective that I'm talking about. You're looking at it as you're like, okay, what is going on? What is happening in this moment? And I'm looking at it as wow, this is a nice break from trying to figure out the story, figure out everything that's going on. And man, I can just really look at this as how to really have that conversation and really keep God in the forefront of what I'm doing. Like, no matter what is going on, I can go to God, I can have that conversation. And what does it look like to really bring God into every aspect of your life? And that's kind of what I got from David. I took a break from okay, this is happening now. He's here, he's doing this, he's going here. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to read it for the relationship value. But
yeah, I was on the other side of that. I
Mhm.
just kept trying to connect, like, okay, what does this random song relate to? And like, oh, that's probably when he was running from his son Solomon. That one's probably he was angry at Joab again.
Yeah. Again.
I'm just really assuming because he keeps talking about his friend, and I'm like, it can't be. Oh wow, I'm blanking on his name, Jonathan. I don't know why, but I just assumed he never fought with Jonathan, and Jonathan just was a nice person. It could have been Jonathan, but I guess I thought it was Joab. I mean, I feel like it's pretty clear him and Joab were friends to some extent, if only because Joab kept saying things like, "Oh, don't bother telling him that. I know how he'll react," which makes him sound like they were on a familiar, friendly relationship. But also at the same time, David was always telling him to be quiet.
Their
Stop talking to
friendship
me.
was very surface level, more acquaintance than friendship, I think, because especially if like, oh, I wrote another song today. Oh, is it another one about me? It's probably not going to be good. Like, seriously, dude, come on. Is that about me? Are you talking about
I
me?
heard you singing in your room about the best friend you hate. I know.
Great, dude. No, I don't want to hear another song.
I do wonder if that was like part of the castle gossip mill. Like, oh, did you hear that song David just wrote about somebody?
I think he called it. Oh no, not again. Oh, well. Good times.
But, you know, it happens. And don't we? It happens in culture. People writing songs about other people, and they're just like, "Oh, who's that song about?" Unrelated, but still happens. Culture today.
So you think like that? Well, Joe, man, do you think there's like a lost book of like a lost Psalms of Joab, like his rebuttal, like it's a rap battle? Like David would write a song.
Songs Joab wrote about David.
Yeah, David got rid of him. David, and then his son. One of them took care of that. They're like, find the songbook. This is all about David. Burn it. Burn it.
It was pretty great though. You know, actually one of my favorite verses was in this section. It's in Psalm 27:8, and it says, "My heart has heard you say, 'Come and talk with me,' and my heart responds, 'Lord, I am coming.'" I was like, oh, this is so nice. Okay, I said that weird, but it's just like that one always hits me because I'm just thinking about this relational part where God is saying to us, "Hey, come and talk with me." How often do we do that? How often do we just go talk to God? Not because we need to say something, which David had a lot of those, but also just because God wants to talk with us. And so for me, that kind of hits me because I put myself in those shoes of my heart has heard you say to me, "Come and talk with me." And my heart responds, "Lord, I am coming." So I love it.
And I like that, like, we get this big chunk of Psalms, and you say, man, one of my favorites is in there, but one of my favorites is Psalm 25. If you go 1 through 7, just in that one chunk, and I always write in here, and I have it on a note card, like I have it all over the place, because in there's surrender, trust, courage, strength, guidance, forgiveness, grace, mercy, all in like those 7 verses is this huge, quick thing to really kind of center and lock yourself in on God. Because, I mean, even that first verse of, "In you, Lord my God, I put my trust." Like just that simple calling out of, okay, no matter what I'm going through, if I just can make that statement and truly mean that, like, no matter what, I put my trust in you, like, that's so huge. And we try to complicate, like, should I be asking? Should I be thankful? Just, I put my trust in you. Like, you've got this. Okay, now where do we go from here? And I think that's one of my big takeaways from this is I'm like, man, going through this Bible, wow, it's circled, it's highlighted, there's notes in here. That must have been important to me at some point, and it's still important now. So I like the ones that have a whole lot packed into a small little, little chunk.
There was a chunk there coming off of what you just said, where David he had an oh bummer moment, and he's talking about his enemies are coming after him. It's a really bad time for him. And then there's just this one chunk of verse at the bottom that basically says, Lord, I put my trust in you because you have saved me. And he says, you have saved me, not you're going to save me, but you have saved me. And it's just kind of the interesting thing of when what does putting your trust in God mean? It has kind of like that present tense to it, where we're not just like looking at our circumstances and we're like, all right, God, I'm going to trust that you will come through eventually and do something about this in my life. But instead to turn that around and look at it and say, okay, God, you have done something. You have come into my life. And maybe I can't see it right now, but I know because you are good and you are merciful that you have saved me. And so that kind of that part struck me.
Yeah.
I didn't even write it down.
Yeah, but as Christians, as believers, as followers of Jesus, like that's I think a big thing to understand, that always remember those times God showed up in your life. Always remember those times where you were absolutely on fire for him, because when you seem distant, when you seem down, when you seem like God isn't there for you, or if you can have those moments in your mind to know, wow, he has shown up for me. Like he has. So if he has in the past, he will again. He hasn't abandoned me. He hasn't left. So I need to root myself in those moments where I know he was there. Because it's very reassuring. It's that comforting of being able to make that statement. I put my trust in you. Like that's where I'm going to put my trust. And I know why. Because you have shown up, and I know you're going to again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big thing. I heard something, maybe the last podcast, but you have a lot of Jesus verses. So
yes,
I'm always excited.
This was Jesus heavy. I didn't even have to look. It was just popping out of nowhere. I mean, usually it popped out of nowhere, but it was just like, oh, there's a Jesus that applies to Jesus. There's Jesus again. And some of them were verses that reminded me of something having to do with Jesus, but there were also verses directly related to Jesus. So if you look at Psalm chapter 22, and you can see it right out of the gate. This is prophetic. And if you're unfamiliar with prophecy, there's basically two different types of prophecies. One is a prophecy. One part of prophecy is to speak about what is happening right now, how God feels about it. Another is to speak about what is happening in the future. And we'll see that once we get to the books of the prophets, which are a little bit past us. But this is a good example of prophecy. And I do wonder if David even knew what was happening. But it is this song that is half David and half straight up Jesus. So it starts out, Psalm 22, verse 1. My God, why have you abandoned me? What does that remind you of?
Well, and even in this version, my God, why have you forsaken me? What?
Which are the words of Jesus when he's on the cross. And then you go down a little further, same chapter. My enemies surround me like a pack of dogs. An evil gang closes in on me. They have pierced my hands and feet. Pretty obvious. Go down a little bit more, verse 18. They divide my garments among themselves and throw dice for my clothing. Again, direct reference to Jesus. And then I love how it wraps up the chapter where it says, his righteous acts will be told to those not yet born. They will hear about everything he has done. And I was like, what?
Well, and once again, I think translation is so important, because Jesus's those words, it is finished. And in the way this ends, he has done it. Like, that's how it ends in this version. So yeah, it's boom. But also, on a better note, in the study Bible, it starts out by saying, for the director of music, to the tune of the doe of the morning. So when you're reading this, if you read it in the tune of the doe of the morning, popular hit back in the day.
I do find those notations kind of funny when it's like, all right, that's great. What tune is that? Don't
It's not
know.
on my Spotify playlist. I don't
Yeah,
have the dough in
it's
the
not.
morning
It's
in
true.
my playlist.
But
Yeah.
isn't that so cool? It's
Yeah.
literally a whole psalm about Jesus. And this was a long, long, long time before Jesus even came on the scene. And when I say
Yeah.
scene, I mean the earthly scene, because technically he's been here
In
the
this
whole
scene.
time. But this was long before Jesus was even born, and David was singing about his death. I mean, literally, that's what is happening right here. And it's crazy how clear it is. Like if you have read the story of Jesus' death, really,
Yeah.
even to a minimal degree, you would read this and then directly read this chapter right after it. You'd be like, oh my goodness, look at that. That's Jesus. That's Jesus.
There,
That's Jesus. It's
I see
crazy.
him. Oh, there he goes. See?
There he goes. It's out that way.
But yeah, I think it's really cool to see it right in that moment, to like not even hiding it, not even like I have to search for it a little bit. Like it's right there, plain as day. I think that's
Yes,
pretty cool.
straight up. It's so cool. My other two Jesus verses, and these ones were not directly related. Like that one was very clearly about Jesus. But this did remind me of Jesus. And I was just kind of pondering it. Jesus is always in the back of my mind when I'm reading anything, so it came through. But Psalms 12 verse 4 says, they say, we will lie to our heart's content. Our lips are our own. Who can stop us? And lying is such this interesting thing, because even in today's culture, we kind of have this thing where lying is not like a bad sin. It's minimal as far as on the scale of what is right and wrong. Yeah. But if you look at, especially a lot in the Old Testament, God comes down pretty hard on lying. And he even says Satan is literally the father of lies, which if Satan is the father of something, it's probably really bad. But when you kind of break this down, and I was thinking about this because I kind of knew Psalm 22 was coming, so I was already thinking about Jesus and the death of Jesus. And so what really came for me was how prevalent lies played a part in the death of Jesus. This is going to be pretty extreme, spoiler alert, but why not talk about him? He's here all the time. But like, they lied about all the bad things that he did. They lied in the Sanhedrin. They lied to Pilate. They lied to the people. They were lying to everybody. And basically, they falsified his crimes to get him killed. And that's kind of what it came down to, which then you go further down, because again, I'm still thinking about this. Psalms 35. Malicious witnesses testify against me. They accuse me of crimes I know nothing about. And I was like, that is exactly what happened to Jesus. And I just kind of was struck, because I was like, how is it that we have minimalized this sin that was one of the biggest moving parts in the crucifixion when you really break it down?
So in your ranking, in your sin ranking, lying has definitely moved up the charts.
Well, I think all sin in the sin ranking is technically, they're all level. But as a culture, we've brought it way down here. Yeah. And it should not be way down here.
Well, because, I mean, then you categorize it. Oh, that was a little white lie. Oh, that wasn't that bad. Nah, that was to protect them. That lie was to protect that person. I didn't want to tell them.
Like, we qualify sin.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But
I tell you, one thing that really and so it was kind of in this realm that you're at, but 32, I love how you can take chunks of scripture and you can really see the main point of it to just kind of keep with you. Because if you go to 32, it looks about this forgiveness, and it says, when I kept silence, my bones waste away. Like when I withdraw from God, when I make sure I don't bring you into it, I'm not going to talk to you. Listen, I am closed off. It says, your hand was heavy on me. And then it goes on, I acknowledged my sin to you. You forgave. All the faithful pray to you. Like, it's just in that one chunk of 32, you can see that. When I pull away from God, your hand is heavy on me. But when I acknowledge my sin to you, you forgive. and then I faithfully pray to you. Like that's so huge to see that progression of, okay, when I take God out of my life, it probably seems like, man, things are just, it's harder. Things are really weighing down on me. But you know what? When I go to you with my problems, when I go to you with my screw ups, when I go to you with everything that I've done wrong, you actually forgive me. And man, my life, when I faithfully pray to you and I let you into it, oh, life gets better. Life does turn around. So I think that's really cool, where you can just see the progression of it and see the difference between life with God and keeping him as a part of it, no matter what, and life without him is huge. But
this was good.
Yeah,
I like these songs. I wasn't sure how it was going to be going into it, because my expectation was we're going to see a lot of David's emotions in this one. I don't know how this is going to feel. Although I did think about this too. I have talked to different people who I'm friends with who always talk about, man, I feel like I'm so emotional all the time and people never know what to do with me. And I just feel like, man, this can't kind of be how God made me. And then I actually read, for me, it was Psalm 38, because he was especially dramatic in that one. But I was like, it's so cool to look at this, talking about, applying this to our daily life. And I looked at it and I was like, this right here is a representative of my friends, like how they feel about the world most of the time. And I just thought, and here was David, and he was this really emotional dude, but he was a man after God's own heart. God loved him dearly. God used him to lead his people, chose him specifically. And I ended up actually texting my friends and being like, you're like David. That's like, that's pretty cool. Like God made you specifically the way that you are. And so I guess to me, if you're listening to this and you feel like you're one of those emotional people and you feel like, I would get crap all the time about being emotional and all these things, you are like David, and God intentionally made you the way that you are, and he wants to use you.
Yeah. So cry out, throw it out there, put out that emotion.
Write a song to the Doe of the Morning tune, preferably.
Doe of the Morning. Oh, it's something. There's a whole lot of songs. Put it on a Spotify. Yeah. I'm going to create a Psalms Spotify playlist. I'm just going to go through and get all the tunes and just make I should have did that before I read it, and I could have had it play in the background. Ugh.
So next steps.
Yes.
What's yours?
For me, really, like I said, the way I read this is just bringing God into the conversation all the time. Like, there's no reason to keep God out of any aspect or any conversation, no matter what. I think it's coming off a week of just, there was horrible weather, so I was just down and like stuck inside and just bleh. And it's like, it's okay to take that and say, you know what? I'm going to take that to God, and I'm going to let him move in that, instead of just being like, well, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm shutting everybody out, and I'm just going to hope it goes away. Like that's a huge thing. So that's, reading all of this was very eye-opening to that, to just strip everything away and not go your direction and try to see where that fits in the story, but just strip it away to the relationship between David and God, and know that if I can keep that relationship that strong through everything that I'm going through, man, my life will get better. So I think that next step is just opening up and keeping God in every situation. Yeah. How about you?
My next step.
Not like me. I didn't know I don't even know if you're on that side. I was just kidding. How about you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pass it off. My next step, I think, comes from one of my favorite verses, which is, my heart hears you say, come and talk with me. And my heart responds, Lord, I am coming. And so I just kind of want to challenge, if you're listening to this, challenging you, Eric, too.
Okay. I'll take it.
How much of your time, kind of phrase this as a question, how much of your time talking to God is just talking to him just because? Not because you're asking for something, not because You're surrounded by thousands of enemies like David. Not because your best friend was rude to you, but just because you want to talk to him. And we do see some of that in David's Psalms that we read, where he just comes and he just starts saying nice things about God and talking to God and be like, God, you're always saving me, and I just really love you, and you're just so amazing. And how much of our prayer time is like that? Because straight up, God is saying to you, come and talk with me. Thank you for listening to What Now with Ann and Eric. We will see you next week, diving more into the Psalms as it continues a long while. Probably see the death of David at one point.
You know what? We know it's coming, but he's hanging on. He's holding strong.
He's hanging on desperately. And look forward to one of the longest chapters in the Bible, which is in Psalms. It just goes on. If you look at your paper version, it's like 6 pages. All right, that's not encouraging at all.
That's not helping at all.
It will be split up, I am sure, in the chronological plan, and will not be as painful it is if you're trying to read 2 chapters a day, as I have done. So we will see you next week. I am Anna.
I'm Eric.
And we're out.
See ya.